Alright. Greetings and peace, everybody. Thank you so much for joining me this morning, wherever you might be joining us from. This morning, I have the honor and pleasure and privilege of being joined by my brother, Raymond Franklin from California. I've been interacting with Brother Ray for a while. His exceptional story of being an American Sufi, his background dealing with different cultures and organizations, and how that ties into the aspect of Islamic mysticism, the aspect of just being an American growing up in this country, freedom for everybody, the rights of human beings, and the aspect of tying in these different ideas into Islamic mysticism. And I'm so honored and privileged to have Brother Ray because he's such a wealth of knowledge. And I myself have learned a lot from him in my journey. And I hand it over to Brother Ray. Please introduce yourself and tell us, who is Raymond Franklin? How did you become who you are today, with the aspect of being an American who found Sufism, tying in elements of Marxism, social justice into the teachings of Islamic mysticism? Please, my brother, I'm honored to listen to you.
I'm very humbled by that very generous introduction. So thank you so much for your kindness and your thoughtful words. So thank you again for having me on this platform. I'm delighted to be here with you. Yes. So I guess the short version, it's like, how do you start from the beginning, right? So I was raised here in the United States. My father is from France. My mother is Italian American. I grew up Roman Catholic. I attended Catholic school up until from kindergarten to 8th grade. And the church was always a major influence in my life. But even at a very young age, I had these feelings that I guess one would describe as mystical or spiritual inclinations that seemed to be something separate from the mainstream teachings and dogmatism that I heard around me. You don't have anybody at that age to ask these questions. You don't even know what questions to ask. As time went on, I've always carried this little secret, I guess, with me. I had some very major life-turning events. When I was 15, 9/11 happened. I grew up about 20 miles outside of New York City. My uncle, who I was very close with, passed away. He was a first responder. That trauma certainly set off a lot of questions, which, looking at it from a later point in my life, were utterly pivotal in my personal spiritual development. The first question that many Americans asked, such as myself, is, what is Islam? Why would they want to do that to us? These very basic questions coming from a place of ignorance and not having any knowledge about the complexities of, geopolitics and religion and culture and all these intersections, that prompted me to ask a question, what is Islam? Why do they want to do that to us? In the process of that journey, I got involved in radical left-wing politics as well at the same time. We're talking war in Afghanistan, war in Iraq, the anti-war movement. I'm still a very young man. I'm 17 years old at that point. So I'm very caught up in this atmosphere, and I start surrounding myself with Marxists and anarchists who are, anti-racist and anti-imperialist. And I'm thinking to myself, wow, I share these values. So I spent a lot of time in this milieu. One of my mentors during this entire process is a man named Dominic, who was a former neo-Nazi who went down the, had trouble with the law, type of man, who eventually became, a punk rocker, an anti-racist, and then converted to Islam. And he was substantially older than I was. And he had a lot of ties in the music scene, which I was involved in. And he took me on he mentored me. And he never pushed Islam on me. He never pushed anything on me. But he did set an example, telling me what Islam is and what it's not. The things that I see out there on the media, what about that might be true? What about that might be false? What about that might be a gross misrepresentation? Is a fringe sect of radicals who use the name of Islam to commit egregious actions? Is Islam a monolithic structure, or is there a multitude of diversity within it? These are things that I learned through him. And I came to see that the impression I had of Islam represented a fraction of people within the world of Islam. And it represented a fraction of people who called themselves Muslims. And even further, I learned that this is less than 1% of the Islamic world. This was a really good lesson for me to learn, because now I understand that what I'm being presented oftentimes is a means to serve a political or social end, and not necessarily indicative of the way things truly are. I realized how many veils of separation was between me and my experience and this broader abstract that we can call the truth of the matter. This was another pivotal moment. The first part was 9/11. It had me asking questions. Then comes to this being mentored by my good friend Dominic, who helped me understand the veils that existed. And from that point on, it's been a quest of trying to get to that truth. And I would have never imagined that it would have taken me into Islam to find those answers, to seek that truth, to try to make sense of the world around me, the nature of the universe, the nature of providence, and recognize myself as a microcosmic aspect within that. I can't help but to feel that everything that I experienced, all the pains and all of the happiness and joys, are all part of a broader divine decree that I'm trying to walk with as much objectivity and understanding as I possibly can, which leads me to here.
Yes, and wow, that's all I can say. The beautiful journey that Almighty God has planned for you. And indeed, my brother, He is the best of all planners. And throughout the good and bad times, it shapes us to who we're meant to be, the things that we're meant to do, people that we're meant to see, places that we're meant to go. You, my brother, are the perfect example of how one thing fell in place of the other, from your childhood, then dealing with these different groups, your journey as a martial artist, that self-discipline, learning that strength within, learning it around you, and knowing, my brother, that nothing happens by chance in this life. Everything kind of gets assigned to you. Your friends, your mates, your spouse, everything has been kind of decreed for you in a very beautiful divine manner. And in the grand architect of the universe, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in whichever way we perceive that divinity, paints your life on the canvas, and it gets painted in such a beautiful and vivid manner that sometimes you realize, why me, or why is this happening to me, or why am I going through this? But then a month later, 6 months later, a year later, you realize everything kind of worked out for its highest good. And that's what your story teaches me, my brother, is that you have to keep the faith. You have to keep the faith and know everything in your life kind of aligns in a perfect and beautiful manner. And each step of your way, you have to submit to the higher plan. There's a word in Arabic called maktub, which means that it's written. and your fate is written. And when you put that faith, knowing that whatever is meant for me shall never escape me, you shall never have grief, you shall never have doubt, and you shall never have any suspicion of any kind. And that's what Baba Muhyiddin, a great Sufi master, had said one time, that the doubt and suspicion is a cancer which we can never cure. So when we set out on a certain path, like the Creator has set out for you, Brother Ray, you removed all of that doubt and suspicion, and you had that firm faith with the aspect of the providence guiding that path for you, which I would also like to ask you, how, as an American Muslim, were you able to find your place dealing with different Sufi groups, being a martial artist, and just finding that epiphany and balance in your life?
That's a great question, and I thank you for it. So I think in order to answer that question as honest from my experience as I can, I think I need to try to establish my own definitions here. So I'd like to first talk about the word Muslim. I think for many people, when they hear the word Muslim, a particular image emerges in the mind. Probably somebody with darker skin, darker hair, maybe a man with a beard, maybe a particular manner of dress, or maybe it's a woman in a particular manner of dress. There's a very strong cultural caricature that often arises in the mind of people, particularly in the West, but when they hear the word Muslim, they also attribute that to a very specific religion, and that religion being the religion of the Prophet Muhammad alaihi wasallam. That is the caricature. So having said that, how do I view and understand the word Muslim? Well, I understand it from a thoroughly universalistic and humanistic perspective. Arabic is an Afro-Asiatic language, just like Aramaic, the language of the Prophet Jesus, just as is Hebrew, Syriac, and a bunch of other languages. In the Hebrew scriptures, there's constant references to righteous men and women, and they are referred to as peacemakers or those who submit. And the Hebrew term for that is mishalim, which is the Hebrew cognate to the Arabic word musalam, which in contemporary English is just Muslim. This word is not a description of one's religious conviction. It's a description into one's state of action. If you are making peace, if you are submitting to the Supreme, then you are a mushalam or musalam, or whichever variants of that word, depending on which language one prefers to use. From my understanding, that the word Muslim does not necessarily denote a particular dogmatic belief. A Christian who strives to make peace, a Christian who strives to be in harmony with the universe, to submit to natural laws, to submit to divine decree, is a Muslim. The same would apply to a Jewish individual, a Buddhist individual, a Hindu individual, etc., etc. Now, I do accept the 4 books. I accept the Old Testament, the Torah. I accept the Psalms. I accept the Gospels of Jesus, and I accept the Quran of the Prophet Muhammad alaihi wasallam. I accept all of these things. I believe in the 6 articles of faith of the Islamic system. There is one religion, and it has no name. We
That
can
is
call.
absolutely correct, Brother Ray. And to complement what you're saying, it says in the Holy Quran, Surah 2, verse 62, that no matter what you follow, Judaism, Christianity, or Islam, as long as you believe in God, do the right thing, then on the day of judgment, you shall have no grief or any kind of worry. Same thing with Surah 49, verse 10, that as long as we are believers, then we are basically all but one brotherhood. Same thing with the last two verses of Surah Baqarah, Surah 2, that we make no distinction between any of the messengers. So as long as we submit, because the definition of being a Muslim or Islam is to submit to the divine in whichever way you do, like the verses of the Quran complement. And I myself have that commonality with you, which makes sense why our souls connected. Where when I came to this country as a 5-year-old kid from Pakistan, I would go to the Bible classes. I would go to the Sikh temples. I would go to the masjid, and I would see that everyone, Brother Ray, is kind of teaching you the truth in their own way. There's
Mhm.
truth everywhere, and it's all one mountaintop, but different paths to get to that mountaintop. And
Precisely.
that's the beauty of it all. So please continue.
I would also add that I had this realization, and I'm certainly not the first person to do so, and I'm certainly will not be the last person to do so. And this metaphor is certainly not my own creation, but it's as if there is to use some imagery, because that's how I make sense of things that are complicated through symbolic references.
Mm,
Uh, it's as if there's a singular divine white light. That is the only true light that exists. It's the only thing that is actually in existence. And that white light travels through an invisible prism. And from that prism, a series of colors emerge. One of those colors might be yellow, one green, one blue, one red, one orange. And let's suppose that those colors descend upon different continents of the world.
mhm,
There will be one region of the world that experiences the divine light from the prism of orange, and another region that will experience it from the prism of green and blue and yellow, etc. Now, for many people, because their experience is blue or green, it's very easy to come to the perspective that that is the only color that exists. The only true color is blue. And the people that claim green or orange as their color, they might be good people. They might be, deserving of rights and privileges as any human being, but they're wrong. They're incorrect. And maybe it would be good if we can teach them about the teachings of green. That's that comes from a place of understandable ignorance. It's ignorant, but it is understandable how that happens, and we should always have compassion even for the people who are misguided, because even their misguidance may not be coming from a place of malice. For some people that might be true. It might come from that place, but I feel that because mankind, men and women, are made within the image of divinity, that even those who are so far removed from that aspect of their higher self are still part of the divine decree, and it's not up to us to judge them. We can acknowledge ignorance when we see it, but to pass judgment upon them, that is not our place. I digress. So the people in these different continents who have seen this different light, there will always be a smaller percentage of them that notice the relationship between these lights and its source, and they strive to see the singular white light. They strive to see the oneness of this rainbow. That what we see as a variety of different colors as separate and distinct, it's actually multiplicity within the realm of unity. And mystics and sages from all time, from ancient Egypt through Arabia and Greece, through Rome, through the continent of Africa, through the Americas, and any place and cultures that I failed to mention, there have always been people who have seen that white light, and always people who've come to this singular truth of the oneness of being. And sadly, these are oftentimes the people who either try to communicate the incommunicable, and their messages turn into dogmatic creeds, whose followers, in my opinion, oftentimes pervert unintentionally so the true nature of those teachings. So you have that. And then you have those people who are trying to teach about the white light, the singularity of oneness of being, are oftentimes martyred for their heterodox views, from their perversions of the truth in accordance to what the profane and the masses and the scholars and kings and queens and bishops in power would say. And that has been our collective experience as mystics, coming from a variety of backgrounds across time, is trying to spread this light, try to make people aware of its existence, never through force, always through consent, always through love and compassion. But we are one Ummah. The Ummah is not reserved for people of one particular belief.
Yeah.
It's reserved for people of a particular action.
That's absolutely correct, Brother Ray, and I couldn't have said it better myself. And I thank you so much for the things that you have shared, and it complements what Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam said in his last sermon, that a non-Arab has no superiority over an Arab, or an Arab has no superiority over a non-Arab, with white, black, and white, vice versa, except by piety and good action. So it's all about your character, about fighting that nafs within. And like how he instructed us that the greatest jihad, and the jihad is a word where you're fighting with yourself. The jihadul akbar is with your own self, with your own vices. I absolutely agree with you that every place that you're looking at, it's all teaching you the truth in their own way. And that's what I've seen, that we are all part of this one ummah, where Islam is not particularly for those from that, that region where it originated from, but it's for the entire ummah, whoever can find truth in it, the oneness of humanity, the oneness of brotherhood, where I could look at you, Brother Ray, and I could look at other people of different races and religion and say, that's my brother, or she's my sister, or this is that. And we see that oneness with one another, knowing that in this short human life that we've been given, we're all walking each other home and owe this love and light to one another. We get lost in these illusions, my brother, and chasing after titles or accolades or pros and pearls. But at the end, it's what good did you do for yourself and others? We're all going to leave from this earth one day. And the greatest thing that I think that we could do is share this light with the ummah and teach them to love and uplift the fallen state of mankind. I think that's the greatest wealth, my brother, that we can accomplish. And you are one of those who is doing that. So in the eyes of the divine, you are a millionaire and billionaire, which I have to ask you. My next question is that if today, Brother Ray, was your last day on earth, like in Islam, it tells us to always be ready. If today was your last day on earth, what would you tell the people that love you, the people that you love, those that put their faith in you, the people that you put your faith in all aspects of your life? What would you tell humanity, Islam, the world, people that love you, etc.?
Oh, that's a very deep and profound question, and I most certainly welcome it. I think the first part, the people that are immediately in my life, my wife,
Mm.
my parents, my sister, my extended family, would be to express to them in the best possible way I could muster how infinitely grateful I I feel to have been in their lives,
Mm.
how thankful I am for all of the experiences and teachings and struggles that we've all gone through together. You know, it's maybe let me provide some context to what I'm trying to say. You know, sometimes I studied formally, my formal studies is history. I have a master's degree in history. I've always been fascinated with history and sociology and anthropology. And when I think about the amount, the miracle culminating in my existence, I'm the only, there will never be another me.
Yes.
All of the events, all of the tragedies, all of the triumphs, all of the everything that a human being could possibly ever experience, all joys and sorrows, the amount of thousands of people, maybe more, whose lives all culminate in me existing. It's overwhelming to think about that. And the people who are the most immediate in that chain leading to my existence on this physical plane, I thank them and love them. Even family members I might have some estrangement to. You've been so important to me that I can't possibly express. And if I knew that my day was imminent, I would probably try to make sure that I can express my gratitude for every aspect that they have played in my life and forgive people who've hurt me and
Yes.
and all of that. It's really hard to even find the words. I do hope that you and your viewers understand the sentiment I'm trying to express, but perhaps failing to do so. To humanity at large, if I knew the life was imminent and I was able to communicate to humanity at large, I would also fail in finding the words, but I think I would try to echo the words of Jesus Christ, however one views him, as a prophet,
Mm.
as the Son of God, or however one of the most beautiful people who've ever walked this planet, when he said, one more commandment I give to you: love one another.
Yes.
And I think that's really it. As somebody who was raised Catholic, and I still regard myself as Catholic and Muslim, which some people have a hard time with.
Mm-hmm.
And I get that. Just because I accept Islam does not mean I deny Catholicism or Christianity. I'm sure there are many people who would find that a contradiction, and a lot of people who maybe have some strong opinions about that. That's quite okay.
Brother Ray, absolutely not, because it says in the Holy Quran that Islam was revealed in stages. So for you to be a Muslim, you have to believe the teachings of Judaism, Christianity, Islam, everything that existed since the time of the Sumerians up until now. It was all Islam, that belief in that one truth being revealed in stages. Even if you look at the statues of the Sumerian gods, you see them praying like this.
Mm-hmm.
So it was all a continuation of that perfection that was being revealed in stages. So it is truly a universal belief, like you said, from the universal perspective. And you laid it out in a very beautiful and articulate manner. And those that know the hidden mysteries of Islam, like the people of the bench, the Sufis who were instructed, just like how Christ, peace be upon him, said in Mark 4:11, that there will be those of you that will know the inner mysteries and those that will be taught in parables. So you are the master of the inner mysteries of Christianity and Islam, which I'm humbled to learn from you, my brother, which goes to my next question is, how do you see yourself as an American Muslim, and just the overall structure of this chaotic society and this chaotic world we're currently in within the next 10 years? How do you see your direction going as a guide, as a teacher, as a murshid? Where do you see your life path taking you, my brother, within this next decade of chaos?
Well, I first and foremost have complete and total tawakkul, complete and total reliance upon the divine and the guidance of the divine. I won't pretend to know where I'm going. I won't pretend to even engage in the hubris of saying the ego that is Raymond, is going to steer that ship. I do intend on being a co-pilot and listening to the instructions of the captain steering the ship. But my hope is that I am able to continue on this journey on self-discovery, and that I am able to increasingly cultivate and perfect my character as possible as I can, trying to continue to learn skills that will assist me in this endeavor, and be an example to the people around me and to the people who trust themselves enough to ask me for guidance or ask me for my opinions. There was certainly a time where I was so driven by wanting to be a murshid, to be a teacher, because I thought I could do so much good, totally motivated by sincere belief that I'm like, oh, I can help people. I've just tasted some sweet tea. Wow, it's awfully sweet. I really want to offer it to everybody else so they can taste it too, you know? And I realized that not everybody wants sweet tea.
Yes.
And maybe some people, they want it, but they'd like to drink their glass of water first. And when they're finished with their water, then they might look for some sweet tea. I've also realized that the ego behind that, the desire, the ego isn't always bad, but the ego is the ego. So is it that my higher self wanted to help people? Or is it that my ego wanted to help people because the ego gets satisfaction from it? I very much realized that that was the case. So if people have questions, are looking for insight, and they come to me, alhamdulillah, I welcome it. And I think it is the obligation of everybody on the path to assist others up to their capacity. In that regard, everybody is a murshid. And this is something that I've recently realized, that there are physical organizations and there are metaphysical organizations. There's different planes of existence, which perhaps is another conversation if we wanted to go into cosmology and that. So one could be recognized as a guide through a Sufi tradition, Chishti, Murid, Madariya, and the vast other array of Sufi orders. And that is a worldly acknowledgement. It's a worldly acknowledgement about spiritual matters, but it's a worldly acknowledgement. And then there is this, what I call the true, I hope I don't ruffle feathers here, the true Sufi order. It doesn't exist on this world. It's
Yes.
entirely on the inner planes. And we don't, I think even calling it a Sufi order is a limitation. It's the true esoteric order, the true, some people call it the White Lodge from the Theosophical tradition. And there is a hierarchical structure of people within this White Lodge. Some are mujadids and kutubs,
Mm-hmm.
and the peak of station, and others are talibs and murids and murshids and various other ranks. That is the real invisible. I sometimes like to call it the Cecilia al-Gaib, the unseen order.
Oh yeah.
And that is the real order. And if one feels that connection, doesn't matter if they're a novice in a traditional Sufi order or mystical school, Rosicrucian, Freemason, or other similar groups. If they know in their heart, if they've been granted a glimpse of that divine light, and they recognize it as such,
Mm-hmm.
then it is their obligation to instruct others, but again, up till their level
Yes.
of understanding and experience. So that is a sincere belief that I hold. It's something that's taken me a long time to realize. I probably have gone so far off your question, so forgive me.
No, that's it, nothing happens by chance, my brother. In my life, I realized there are no coincidences, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala used your heart and your voice to share this message with my viewers who get lost in these different aspects of the dichotomy, but you laid it out in such a beautiful manner. And you have these different traditions that mention the White Lodge or the Great White Brotherhood, and it's all there. You have to come to that realization in your own heart, and few people, my brother, get that. You are one of the few lucky souls who had that epiphany, because it also says in the Quran that there are some people that you can show all the evidence to them, all the knowledge, all the light, but Allah has sealed their hearts and their minds and kept them ignorant. So you are not one of them. You are blessed, my brother, and this world is grateful to have you, because you are one of those lights that's keeping this world together, which goes to my next question, Brother Ray. Due to your extensive background and experience, what similarities did you find within the, I guess, the teachings of Marxism, and in comparison to the Islamic mysticism teachings or the Medina welfare state or the aspects of equality for all? What connection did you find with Marx and Islam?
So this is an amazing question, and probably one that I could talk at length about, but I'm going to try to keep some focus. First, I would like to mention what is Marxism. I think that's an important first point, because if you ask 100 different people what Marxism is, you're going to get 100 different answers. So classical Marxism, the Marxism of Karl Marx and Frederick Engels, comes out of the left Hegelian movement. These were disciples of the idealist Hegel, who helped perfect the dialectical method. And the dialectical method, again, for those who just might not be familiar with this, or who could use a reminder, is that if you have a thesis and you interact that with its antithesis, then you get a synthesis. So two opposites opposing one another. So hot, cold. The synthesis is warm, the in-between. So Hegel believed that through the dialectical method, one could come to know the divine. Mm-hmm. Now, this is the age of enlightenment. This is this age of reason. So you have a variety of different perspectives. So the Hegelian movement turned into a left movement and a right movement. The right movement maintained a lot of the spiritual, idealistic aspects of Hegel and tried to carry that legacy. The left Hegelians saw in the Hegelian method a template for understanding a variety of other things on the material world. So Marx took the Hegelian method and materialized it. And this is a new idea called historical materialism, that we can understand the socio-historic unfolding of humanity from Atlantis and Egypt to the present through applying the dialectical method by looking at society. So the Marxist viewpoint, again, we're talking classical Marxism. I'm not talking about Lenin or Trotsky or Stalin or Mao or Kim Il-sung. I'm talking the very beginning of these ideas, is that if we look at the earliest societies, we will find, in short, those who have, those who do not. And there's always going to be an antagonistic conflict between those. So in the old societies, you have slave owners and slaves, thesis, antithesis, and antagonism. So what happened is in those old Greek and Roman and Arabian systems and others, you have this conflict of different opposing classes. So from this slave system, from slave and slave owner, you get the feudal system. And in the feudal system, you have lords and vassals, and then you have serfs and peasants. Again, a have class and a have not class. The antagonisms between that breeded a new dynamic, creating the new bourgeois class, the capitalist system. And in the capitalist system, you have capitalists who are people who accumulate capital assets. And by simply owning assets, they derive wealth. I own a mineral mine. I don't have to work. I own the mine. The mine itself is my wealth. I extract stuff from it. I pay people to do the labor. I can sit and collect the benefit of that. Or if I buy a really nice home and it appreciates in value, that home is my capital asset. Now, many people who own their homes still have to work and stuff. I'm just using this as an example to understand what I mean by capital appreciation accumulation. And then you have those, the massive people who have to, their only way of survival is to sell their ability to labor.
Mm-hmm.
That is how they earn their money. You have one who owns, and by owning something, they acquire wealth, and the other who has to sell their labor power, many times to the lowest bidder, and how they survive. And if you look at the world around you, you'll see this is largely true. You'll find people who identify politically on the left and politically on the right who are fed up with, you know, the elite, the rich and powerful, right? So, so this is the template, the Marxist template. There's so many other things I could talk about regarding Marxism, but I think for our purpose, this is probably the most important. So, having said that, the Prophet Muhammad alayhi wasalam and other major prophets saw a similar thing in their societies. They saw people suffering, they saw orphans, they saw widows, they saw the sick, the elderly, they saw outdated systems of tribal blood feuds that would last generations, and they saw the priestly classes who would, you know, claim to have a monopoly on communication with the divine, and this complete have and have not, powerful and powerless. And part of his ministry was not simply the spiritual aspect of promoting the science of Tawhid, that there is none but God. There is only one God. But also to instill a sense of social justice and social responsibility. But this social justice and social responsibility is not about forcing people to do this or that. It's about fundamentally changing the consciousness of people through stages. And that is something that is shared in the Marxist tradition. Again, I know there are probably people who are going to listen to this that say, well, what about Mao? And I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the theory. I'm not talking about people who do things in the name of Marx. Just like people do things in the name of the Prophet Muhammad alayhi wasallam that is un-Islamic. There are countless examples in our own Western culture of people doing things in the name of Jesus that are thoroughly un-Christian, right? So let's keep that mind frame for folks who might feel triggered by these terms.
Oh, of course. And I think you laid it out in such a great manner, Brother Ray, in the, the type of mannerism that you always do, which is appreciated, loved, and honored. And I would also like to ask you is, how do you see humanity going within this next 5 to 10 years? There's like so much going on in the world. And with that, you can give your closing thoughts and wherever the viewers can get in touch with you and make contact with you.
Thank you. So I don't know what humanity is going to face in the next 5 to 10 years. We collectively have a lot of challenges. We have the very real threat of anthropomorphic global climate change, which is going to usher in a series of humanitarian crises, which in turn are going to create political instabilities. To give an example, there was a lot of to do about Syrian refugees some years ago, people fleeing awful war-torn parts of the world in Syria and elsewhere.
Brother Ray, are you there?
Migrant climate become inhabitable into places to seek.
Are you there?
Yes, I'm here. It seems that
Something happened. This
we've
happened
had some technical issues.
one time before. Please, what you were saying about the Syrian refugees, because that got cut off. So just please restart from there.
Absolutely. So, you have this mass of people fleeing a war-torn area, and they're heading to Europe and to the Americas, and that caused a lot of civil strife in these places, a lot of heated debates, a lot of prejudices getting stirred up. Now, what do you think is going to be the case when large parts of the world, which are already extremely hot and arid and barely, habitable, become inhabitable due to anthropomorphic global climate change? When you have millions of people fleeing parts of Africa, parts of the Middle East, where are they going to go? They're going to go to these same places that have already had a big up in arms over a few thousand Syrian refugees. Wait till it's millions of people. Yes. And sadly, these millions of people are going to be millions of others in the eyes of many. They don't look like us. They don't speak like us. They have a different religion and culture. I'm very fearful that there is going to be a lot of intolerance and destabilizing events. And, I don't want to project or try to create an alarmist way of thinking, but these are things that really concern me and keep me up at night sometimes. Concurrently, however, I do believe in human will. I do believe in humanity, which is made in the image of deity by tradition. And I do believe that there will be a lot of issues, a lot of problems. I do, however, also believe that we as a human species will be able to move in a different direction. We're still a young species. We're still in our infancy on this planet. And we still have a lot of spiritual involution necessary. But I also can't help feeling this sense of optimism. If one were to spend time reading and studying from many of the spiritual masters of different traditions, a lot of them seem to have this idea that the 21st century and beyond is going to be a very pivotal moment in the evolution of the human psyche, the human mind, and that a lot of spiritual growth and maturity will occur, particularly in Western countries.
Yes.
Not that these countries are superior or anything, but I forget if it's in the Quran or the Hadith, and please, brother, correct me if I'm misquoting this, but I do believe that somewhere there is something where the Prophet Muhammad alaihi wasallam suggests that the sun will at some point rise in the west. Something
that is correct. That's shown as one of the signs of the end times, where there's going to be the high-rise buildings in the Arab world. They're going to be in a contest of creating bigger buildings instead of doing the zakat to help the poor. There's going to be the rise in corruption, greed, gluttony, ego, and also one of those signs that instead of the east, the sun will rise in the west. You are correct.
So yeah, that's the Hadith al-Jibril, correct? Okay. So I think so. Then there's this is Sunnah. This is Sunnah of the Prophet Muhammad alaihi wasallam that we're talking about. This is the tradition of Islam, and it's the tradition found in other places as well, which I would argue is also Islam. To go back to our earlier portion of our conversation. So I think there's going to be a lot of heartache, but I do think that there will be a rebirth. I think humanity will grow from these challenges, as the only thing that makes us grow as individuals are the challenges that we face. We either decide to confront these challenges in which we grow, or we shy from them and we remain stuck. And I think these are going to be challenges thrust upon us. And I think that there will be a triumph of the will and the spirit of humanity to usher in a new era, which will override a lot of the gross materialism and vanity and ego that has been plaguing our society, our planet for a while now. I won't even begin to say that point in time, but I think it will usher in a new era. And I think this is what, the Hindus call the Kali Yuga, and there's every tradition has a map of these events, which again, just wanted to highlight that, to go back to the unity of existence, the unity of being, that we are one ummah, that we are all beings of light, Maybe some of us have different shades due to our cultural upbringing and influence, but we are all beings of light trying to go back to the source. So I do feel optimistic about humanity. I do think that the Almighty will bless us with an evolved faculties.
Mm-hmm.
They say that we use 10% of our brain power. Imagine if we used 15%. You know, I think that there will be a massive upgrade. It will be both directed from spirit and from matter as they work in tandem.
That's right. That's right.
They are necessary to work in tandem, which is something we haven't talked about in our conversation. But they are codependent for self-actualization, both on an individual level and on a collective level as well.
Thank you, Brother Ray, and thank you so much for this conversation and gracing us with your love, light, and presence. Now, where can the viewers find you, and how can they contact you?
Well, I don't really have a platform for people to contact me necessarily, but what I would encourage them to do is on Facebook, if they do feel inclined to want to connect with me, they can find me on your friends list or search me. And my name on Facebook is Ray D. Frankel, Frankel. So Ray, letter D as in Dominic, Frankel. And you can certainly shoot me a message and we can start a conversation there. Again, I want to thank you so much for your friendship and your guidance. It's definitely goes both ways. You said that you feel that you've learned from me. I most certainly learned a lot from you, and I continue to look forward to learning more from you and our exchanges. And I'm just eternally grateful to the Almighty for linking us together, as well as many other brothers and sisters that we seem to share in common in our circle. So,
Thank you, Brother Ray. Alhamdulillah, I give you my greetings of Assalamu alaikum, peace be upon you and yours. And I also give permission to Brother Ray to use this video when it's uploaded as he sees fit. So my love and light to you, Brother Ray, and thank you again. Assalamu alaikum and peace.
Wa alaikum assalam wa nur. Thank you.
Thank you, brother.